Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and recently a bunch of new cards were revealed from the expansion Heatwave Arena. Shaymin is a card I did cover before, but it is really important. I figured I'd talk about it again, and then there's a bunch of new cards I haven't talked about yet either. And I'm really excited to talk about these cards because these are definitely, I'd say, a little better than the ones we talked about last time. The Shaymin is probably still the best card of all these, though there are some that are pretty solid that we'll take a look at today. Last time we looked at. Ponyta and Rapidash and some of Ethan's Pokemon and these like Ogerpons, and I think this there are as well. So those weren't super interesting, though today these ones are. But again, we're starting with Shaymin, which is a really important card to talk about, which is arguably the most impactful card of this entire set. I don't really know if that's true. It's certainly up there though, and that's because of its ability, which is Flower Curtain, which says prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon without a rule box by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. These are the main Pokemon you'd be looking to protect anyways, specifically those low HP basics, but it protects, most of your Pokemon. Rule box Pokemon are essentially just Pokemon EX. They're might be other Pokemon that are rule box Pokemon that aren't EXs, but I can't think of any off the top of my head in post rotation standard. This will be Heatwave Arena, the second, which is making up Destined Rivals, the second set of the year. So, or the second main set of the year, I should say. The second set post rotation, and it has Trans Pokemon has some stuff, but yeah, this is really important because Manaphy is rotating. Manaphy, if you don't know, I imagine presumably pretty much all of you know Manaphy, which has the ability Wave Veil, which says you prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon from your opponent's Pokemon. It's essentially the same. Again, Manaphy, there's two major differences. There's two major differences. Manaphy does only have 70 HP, which is really nice, and then it does protect all your bench Pokemon. Protecting all of them, again, is like nice, I guess. I would see it saying Gardevoir EX. Realistically, is your opponent sniping your Gardevoir EX? Probably, like, almost definitely not. And we see it in, like, Dragapult EX, Charizard EX. These Pokemon can't get sniped. Something like Fezandipiti EX could be, so protecting that is nice, and losing that is a little annoying. Same thing with Lumineon V, Rotom V, Rini Alakazam as well. These are, Pokemon that are Rule-X Pokemon, though they are all rotating. A lot of these are rotating that you might be looking to protect. Squawkabilly X, I guess, is the number one card that you're looking to protect that's a Rule-Box Pokemon because of its low HP, but still, it's not a big deal. Having 80 HP, though, is because which is bad for Shaymin because in I think all these decks, pretty much all these decks, they play 4 copies, or at least a bunch of copies of Buddy Buddy Poffin, which lets you search for basic Pokemon 2, which is twice as good as Nestball, but they need to have 70 HP or less, so it's really good in decks that can use it. It's pretty insane, and has been a part that I think is not talked about too much of these decks being good, these single price basic decks. Well, decks that play single price basics. Obviously, Gardevoir, or I guess like Dragapult and Charizard, those are better examples. They're not, focused on these single prize basics, but they are still an important part of the deck to get to the main stage 2 attacker. And so you'll probably still be playing Buddy Buddy Poffin with Shaymin. They'll be in the same deck, but you can't get it there. But still, this is a really huge card, and we will be losing this bench protection for a set, but only a set, and it will be coming back in essentially the same form. Then the next card we have here is Misty Starmie and Misty Staryu, and these cards are, I guess I'll go to Justin Basil's website, which is a cool website with some new cards that aren't out yet. And apparently they're here, which is cool. But Misty Staryu doesn't really matter. It exists, which does matter, but it evolves into Misty Starmie, which for 1 water on a stage 1 does 80. And if it evolved from Misty Staryu this turn, it does it does 100 more, so it does it does 80 more, so it does 140. There we go. That is like mediocre damage. This is standard focus, but in other formats such as GLC or any other lower power format, this is like a bit, a bit stronger. But it's really nice to do. Like it's solid damage. You're only doing. I actually thought this paralyzed because usually attacks this paralyzed with the name Flash. I feel like it's common, but anyways, this is like okay. It's not amazing, but it's usable. But what this matters most for is Misty's Gyarados. This is a really interesting card, one that theoretically could be an insane attacker, but just didn't have the amount of Misty's Pokemon to do what it wanted to do. But this says discard the top 7 cards of your deck. This does 70 damage for each Misty's Pokemon. You discard it in this way. And so you have Misty's side deck, which can put itself on top of your deck if it's on your bench. You mill the bottom card of your deck, which is like super random. It's super weird. It's not actually super random in the actual effect because you could have been Ionoed and you kind of know what's on the bottom. But anyways, you have Misty Gyarados, Misty's Magikarp, and Misty Psyduck. Those are the three revealed so far. Then Misty Starmie and Misty Starmie are now that makes five. Obviously, you're not getting all these in play at the same time, and you're not looking to do that. But you need Pokemon to discard with Misty Gyarados. 20 is like okay. It's not amazing, or it's solid. I'd like to see maybe one more, which I don't think we're necessarily getting. Um, but this is solid. I think Mrs. Gyarados is decent. Discarding three is probably what you're trying to look to do. I mean, obviously 4 or 5 is nice. 5 would one-shot anything. Actually, no, 7. I think you're looking to discard 4 or 5. That's kind of the number you're aiming for. And keep in mind that the card Sacred Ash, an item card allowing you to recover 5 basic Pokemon from your discard into your deck, is coming back. So you will be able to theoretically hit for like pretty solidly, consistently big damage with Mrs. Gyarados. Not, the most consistent, but it's decent. I think this is a solid version of cards like this. We've seen a bunch like this, and most of them are pretty bad. Mrs. Gyarados seems okay, and these new cards are really important to that. Then the next card is Hydrapple. Hydrapple is actually super cool. Applin and Dipplin aren't very interesting here, and they're pretty interesting Pokemon in the TCG as a whole, to be honest. As we take a look at Dipplin having oh yeah, there's three. The dragon one's not very meaningful, but the grass one set or the two grass ones. This one walls basics for one grass on the stage one. It's okay. It's not really played very much, but it's a decent card. I mean, you take a look at there's for Giraffe X, which also walls basics. They're kind of similar. They're not super similar, but still, Dipplin it's a solid card. It's not amazing, but it's a decent middle evolution. Then the other one from Twilight Masquerade, it says it's from the newest one's from Prismatic Evolutions, but it says if you have Festival Grounds in generally it can do 100, but if you have Festival Grounds in play, you can attack twice, essentially do 200, which is really nice. Diplin's not an amazing card, either of them. Festival Lead's an okay deck. I mean, in Japan, which I'm going to make a video on, I think tomorrow, or maybe I've released it already. I think it's coming out tomorrow. But Festival Lead's been like okay in Japan, not great, not like a top deck, but it is a deck it's okay. And this Hydrapple is really interesting because what it does for only one grass, this is the attack you're looking at. The 140 for 3 isn't super good. It's actually pretty bad because it doesn't even one-shot Charizard EX to the weakness. But you have 170 HP, 3 retreat, which is kind of bad. But you discard 6 energy, grass energy from your hand, basic grass, I guess, which I don't know what the alternative would. I can't speak. I don't know what the alternative would be there, but you discard 6 of those, and then you knock out your opponent's active instantly. But you do need to obviously get those 6 plus the 1 attached. So realistically, 7 energy, which is a ton. You do have superior energy retrieval, and if there are ways to get grass energy back, not specifically grass, but energy in general, like we see them with Goldengo EX. This is interesting. It's kind of like Goldengo EX. It is a stage 2, but it is a single prizer. This card's cool. It's like okay. I don't expect it to be super good. It's not really good tech in Festival Lead because you're not throwing around this much energy. I mean, you probably how many energies are played in the deck anyways? I think it's I don't think it's that high. It's like 4. Oh, 4 is definitely not enough. I thought it was like 8. If you're playing a Hydrapple EX deck, this is a better inclusion. Hydrapple EX isn't super good, but you play lots of grass energies, so that's more interesting, more viable there. And bug catching set does get the energies out of your deck easier. Yeah, Festival Lead looks like it's playing like 6 energies. I thought it was a little. I mean, 6 is like fair. That's Hydrapple EX. So, yeah, like 4, 5, 6. So that's not enough. Like, it's not possible to actually attack with this. You could ramp it up to like 8 and put this in. That's still really sketchy. So I would like really recommend against that. But this Hydrapple is an interesting card. You can kind of mix and match some of the Hydrapple pieces from the Hydrapple EX, which I guess I didn't say what it did. For those of you who aren't familiar, which is probably a bunch of you, but you can attach a basic grass from your hand to one of your Pokemon, any of them, and then if you did, you heal 30. It's kind of like Teal Mesogarpon EX. It's actually probably a little worse, but then Syrup Storm for 2 colors, you do 30 more for each grass energy attached to all your Pokemon. It's like okay, it's not super good, but it's not bad either. And I mentioned grass hitting a weakness on Charizard DX, so that's kind of cool. Again, nothing crazy, but kind of interesting. This one plays the new single prize Wuchan as well. This one's, or it's not that new, but newer one. I thought it was a different one. This is kind of fun, but anyways, Hydrapple is really interesting. Not a super strong card. I mean, I guess theoretically, like it one-shots everything, so that's pretty strong. But this is a really interesting card. Not one I expect to be super good. I say it's weaker than the Mrs. Gyarados, which I don't expect to be super good either. But it's an interesting card to consider here. Then we have Crustle and Dwebble. Crustle has Ascension, letting you search for the evolution and play it, or like immediately evolve into it, which is really nice. Turn 1 going second. This means you can use it and get the Crustle into play, and obviously turn 2 going first. You can also get the Crustle into play, so you'll be able to get the Crustle into play before your opponent has a turn with evolution. So that's really nice. I mean, I guess they could use Ascension and then that'd be before you, but before they can attack with their evolution. So this is really nice, especially with Crustle's ability, which is really good. Mysterious Stone House is the translation, which is probably not the name of that, but it says prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. Your attack here is, it's not great to be honest. It's Great Scissors. Well, okay, it's called Great Scissors, but it does 120 for Grass, Colorless, and isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active. I bet probably most people know why this is the case, but or I bet no, I don't know. Tell me down below if you knew this and knew this before. I've talked about it on the channel a few times, but it says it hits through walls, what I sometimes call a wall breaker, or there are lots of attacks like this, and they're on Pokemon that are walls themselves. The reason for this is because you don't want to get into a scenario where two Pokemon can't hit each other. Like say if your opponent had Cornerstone Massacre upon EX, then you had Crustle. Crustle's immune. I mean, they're immune to each other, except they're not because they both hit through effects of attacks. So Pokemon doesn't want people just getting like stuck in these stalemate situations. I think they can still arise. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But obviously, there are cards like that trap. Though Pokemon's reducing them a lot. So Pokemon's I'm definitely leaning a little away from stall and control archetypes some, and trying to I don't know if that's exactly true, but they're kind of trying to balance them some. I said like stall is, they're moving away from that. That's not really true. They're moving more towards like stage 1 Pokemon like Milotic EX and Frigidraff EX, which I'm not big fans of. That is a deck that has been played in Japan. If we looked at, I believe one of the biggest tournaments of the year, if not the biggest, is the Champions League tournament. And this one of the top decks, if not the top deck from the tournament, is the Walls-based deck with Milotic EX, Frigidraff EX, Cornerstone Massacre Pun EX, and then Mimikyu as well sometimes. Mimikyu is a card that I think is like super insane. It's essentially the same ability as Crustle and Dwebble. It walls Vs, but there won't be any Vs in the game. Theoretically, there could be a bunch of Pokemon that are not EXs that this doesn't wall, so this might become kind of irrelevant, but there's Crustle. There's also Sylveon, which are like kind of the same. I don't know if there are any EVs that evolve instantly. Oh, well, there is though with boosted evolution. So yeah, that might be a little better. Oh, and there's also one with Ascension. Okay, so the EVs evolve a little easier than the Crustle. Sylveon, I believe, is weaker. And I didn't explain this either. And so Sylveon doesn't have this. Sylveon is a wall that doesn't hit through itself. Well, it normally would, but if your opponent's copying it with an EX, aka with Mew EX, then Mew EX will not be a counter to Sylveon, unlike the fact that it's a counter to Crustle or Mimikyu, for example. So that's really interesting here. And again, a downside for Crustle, it can be countered by Mew EX, kind of. I mean, you trade positively, you knock each other out in 2 hits, but then on top of that, obviously, Mew EX gives up 2 prizes. So Crustle is still good. I think walling abilities like this are really good in the game. Well, I don't know if they're good for the game, but they're really strong. So that's really, really interesting there, and definitely a card to keep an eye out for. Will it be good? I don't really know whether it'll be good or not. It definitely has the chance to be. It just kind of depends how good EXs are, which I think is not that big of a question. They probably will be, but then the bigger question is, one, will there be replacements for EXs that then this isn't walling and then it's kind of irrelevant? Or 2, more importantly, is this the best option? And I don't think so necessarily. I think Mimikyu's better. I think Sylveon might be better, but it's okay. I mean, Crystal's definitely a solid Pokemon here. Then we have 2 trainer cards. The one is not new. The one is Judge. Judge most recently came out in Scarlet Violet base set, it looks like. And I don't know if that's the newest print in Japan. I don't think it is. No, maybe it is. So this is G regulation mark judge, but this new one is, oh, it's also G regulation mark. Okay, never mind. So this is just, oh, it literally says that. Okay, so this is a reprint, but it's just a new art, so that doesn't really matter here. So judge will be rotating. But anyways, MC's hype up is in a supporter card here, which says draw two if your opponent has three or fewer prizes remaining. You draw four. I don't think this card's very good. I'm gonna be completely honest. I think it's pretty bad. I almost consider making a whole video on cards like this, where there's like draw four or draw two supporters. Pretty much all of them are bad. There have been a few that are okay. Um, okay to like good. I think some have like scratched the surface of like tier two supporters at times. When I talk about supporters and tiers, there's the top tier of you could divide this up into S tier being Boston Iono is what I'd say, but then below that you have like Professor's Research, Professor Sal's Vitality. I might toss Professor Terra's Scenario in there. You could not. Colus's Experiment, not super strong right now, but certainly probably in that tier. And Judge itself probably in that tier. And there's probably a few more. There's definitely a few more. I'm not remembering all of them off the top of my head. I'd probably put Roxanne as well there. And these are like solid supporters that are, considerations in different decks and pretty strong and stuff like that. And then there's the tier below where you have maybe the supporters like Kieran, which is like a little. Kieran's not bad. Kieran might actually be in that top or the like essentially top tier. But you look at cards like there's two of these coming in the next Japanese expansion, but then you have I'm gonna make a whole video on this at some point as well, I think, but we have different supporters like I'd say Explorer's Guidance probably in that tier. It's not super good. There are occasionally times when you'd want it. Um, Something like Surfer is in that tier, and Drayton as well. Also in that tier, Drayton is actually a really fun supporter, in my opinion. And some supporters that you kind of know of kind of don't. Hassle's actually probably in the higher tier, but it's just not a supporter that sees that much play. And then you also have you just have like Morty's Conviction, I think is kind of the definition of that tier. These supporters that are like mediocre, like solid draw supporters, you could play them if you want, but most people won't. This is not in those. Those are what the best of these draw four cards can be. If there's a card that should just draw four, I think it might be solid. Though I don't think it would be super good. I think it would be in that like tier two, which is okay. These cards are pretty bad, and this has become a bit of a, I don't know if I'd quite say a rant, but kind of like that. But yeah, you can kind of manipulate this to get this over half the game. It's probably under half the game that you're getting the draw for, but you couldn't force it into that situation. But it's still not very good. Draw 4 is mediocre. It's not like it's really putting you in an amazing position. So the supporter isn't very good, unfortunately, but there are some really cool cards that were just revealed and cool cards coming out in Heatwave Arena as a whole. It's going to be, it's a really cool set. It has a bunch of trainers with trainers Pokemon, which is awesome. Almost twice as many trainers as the first expansion Journey Together. So I'm really looking forward to that. But tell me down below in the comments what your thoughts are on these new cards, especially I guess I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on Hydrapple, though as I said, I don't think it's super good, but also Shaymin. Shaymin is a really impactful card, and some people don't like these effects, and some people do, but I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.